Mason, it comes on live.
Mhm.
And we're both like
Pounding it out, right?
Yeah, we're pounding it out. Good music. All righty.
I needed a long hair and a younger neck, and then I would be like totally this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hair flying everywhere. That's great. So we are going to open today. Welcome back to Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. We have a breaking story today. I believe the news story broke yesterday. And a new team member here at Unpacking Mormonism, Julia Sanders from Analyzing Mormonism. She's pretty TikTok popular.
Savvy.
She is very savvy. Yes, absolutely savvy. But I love her videos. I've actually got a client that introduced me to her because she was his favorite. So I reached out to her. She lives.
Wait, was she his favorite and now we're his favorite, or?
No, she's still his favorite.
Oh, well, that sucks.
No, it's good. I love it. So anyway, but we have hired.
Julia.
Okay, Mason, zip it. We hired Julia, and she gave us this tip and helped us put today's show together. So very grateful to Julia. Big shout out there. We're very excited to have Julia and America as part of the Daisy Girl Communications team. So just wanted to introduce that, but I am going to react to what Julia says is bad therapy. So we want to open the show saying that neither Mason or I have seen any of this content. Julia put it together and she sent it to our producer. So neither Mason or I have seen anything having to do with Jodi Hildebrandt, and I don't remember the name of the other person, Ruby something, I think. Oh, Ruby Frank. Hey, it's coming to me, or Franke, Franke. So I have not seen any of this. I have not watched the news at all because I've been super self-absorbed with marketing my book for the last.
That is not the right term. Self-absorbed that's not the term you're looking for.
Okay, what's the term I'm looking for, Mason?
Hyper-focused, maybe. Absorbed, but not self-absorbed.
It's been nuts. So our Westbrook was up moment. Mason and I talked about this before we came in. Is Mason, do you want to go ahead and share that real quick? The Westbrook was up moment. Do you want to share? Or do you want me? You share it so you can talk. You said earlier you never.
No. This was your moment. You share it. I don't hear this stuff mostly anyway, so this is on. Although I do get to hear it when I pick Abby up from school, which is I usually do that. So
yeah. So
go ahead.
We have, as you all know, we have several special needs children, and we communicate with the teachers and their staff on a regular basis. And with Abby, a regular basis usually means almost daily. And and
I wish I could argue with that.
And usually the news is not fantastic. So but since she started school at the very end of August or beginning of September, I don't even remember. They've been at
school this year, yeah.
Since they started school this year, I have received almost daily updates about how Abby is in her general ed classroom more often and how kind and gentle she has been. So she's in 4th grade. So she's mentoring the 3rd graders and showing them around. But I have been told how friendly she's been, that she's been able to maintain her focus and stay in her seat, which is huge for Abby. We also got great news. She had her annual colonoscopy endoscopy due to her Crohn's. And for the first time in what, Mason, 2 years, 3 years? How long has it been now?
Oh, it's been about 2 years. Yeah, I don't remember
2 years since. So 2 years since diagnosis. I'm going to say 3 years since she really started to struggle. But she had a beautiful colon. There were no active Crohn's lesions, which is huge. So if you want to tune in a little bit and hear some more about Abby, go on this channel. We're actually moving the Raising Crazy Growing Up to Show Up channel to the Unpacking Mormonism show. We're just making one Daisy Girl Communications channel. And so those episodes are going to be live. So that way, if you are interested in listening to some of the antics and challenges that we've had with Abby, but it has been amazing. It is amazing to me how much I'm falling off we got a new chair and I'm falling off of it, y'all. It is amazing to me how much our physical health influences our mental health. And as Abby's physical health has improved, her mental health, things like, her autistic behaviors and meltdowns and struggles, and she has some of the most severe ADHD most providers have ever seen. She's just busy, even though she's on a ton of ADHD medications. It's just amazing to me. For one, her meds can absorb, and for two, she just feels better. So
it goes the other way too.
Yes.
Our mental health affects our physical health as well. So
absolutely. Thank you, Mason. So that's been great news. All right. So let's start on some reactions.
Let's do it.
Go ahead, Alex. Let's see what Julia prepared for us.
I have to wait for the video.
Oh, I'm so pretty. See, self-absorbed.
Well, you're right. On that one, self-absorbed is probably the right thing.
All right, here we go.
A YouTube influencer and a mental health counselor made their initial court appearances in the St. George on felony child abuse charges. As news specialist Andrew Adams saw for himself, the interest in this case is so high, it nearly derailed the hearing. Andrew?
Well, at one point, one of the lawyers outside the court told everyone that even the judge was having a hard time signing on to the online hearing with as many as 1,200 observers. Some people even showed up in person to see the latest in a case that had both captivated and concerned them.
It was like my whole childhood, so I thought it was crazy.
On a quiet day outside 5th District Court, it was anything but inside.
I grew up watching the 8 Passengers channel, and so when I saw all this happening, I got super intrigued.
Complete strangers showed to see the initial appearances of 8 Passengers influencer Ruby Franke and mental health counselor Jodi Hildebrandt, both charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse.
And also I'm interested in looking into criminal psychology, so I wanted to come to a case I was interested in.
It seemed a lot of people had the same idea. So many logged on to the online hearing, it clogged up the system.
Because the interest in these hearings today from the public and members of the media, we've had some technical difficulties.
Nearly 40 minutes after the scheduled start time.
Ms. Franke, can you hear me?
Yes.
Franke and Hildebrandt made their separate appearances to face their charges for the first time. Both women are being held without bail, and a hearing was scheduled to address that matter.
She's aware of the charges, she's aware of the elements, she's aware of the potential penalties.
When I was a kid, I just thought they were the coolest family, and I'd watch them all day, every day, whenever I had free time.
Given the influencer's popularity in particular, observers say the ordeal has left them stunned as the world watches.
With how popular they were and how much it's been blowing up over social media, I can understand why. But it's just crazy that it's gotten this big.
Well, that hearing about the bail issue was set for September 21st, but it sounds like at least one of the lawyers had a potential conflict. So we'll have to see how that shakes out over the next couple of weeks. Again, both women being held without bail here in Washington County. Andrew Adams, KSL 5 News.
Okay. Let me pick this up. Dropping shit over here. So, Mason, have you ever heard of 8 Passengers?
No.
I don't know what that is. I'm gonna look it up real quick.
My first question actually is just, does anybody know why this was a virtual hearing?
That's actually gotten really common. When I was working at the local jail here, Camden County Jail, I think it's been something since COVID. It makes transport of
okay, so they're in prison and they were just virtual to the courthouse. Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's become pretty popular. 8 Passengers. All right, let me read this. 8 Passengers was a YouTube channel started in 2015 that documented the lives of mom and dad, Ruby and Kevin Franke, and their 6 children. I'm probably going to butcher these names. Shari, Chad, Abby, Julie, Russell, and Eve. At its peak, it boasted 2.5 million subscribers and was known as one of the most famous or infamous family video channels. I've actually had some clients tell me I should vlog our house. And I'm like, yeah, but if I was vlogging my house, I wouldn't have the ability to actually watch my children, and that would be dangerous. So I think this first video really is just to kind of introduce us a little bit to what's going on and whatnot. I think that if they're being held without bail, that's a pretty good indication that they either can't release them for risk to the prisoner's safety, or that their crime was so horrific that releasing them is a concern to public safety. And
Well, yeah,
my guess is it's
considering
probably a little bit of both.
considering it's child abuse, it's kind of odd to be held without bail. And of course, that's what the hearing was about was about bail, I guess, or at least part of the reason. But
Right.
yeah, it's kind of odd for something like this to be held without bail.
Right. Well, and Julia wanted me to make sure that we announced in the beginning that Jodi Hildebrandt, is that her name? Jodi Hildebrandt,
Yeah.
is an LDS therapist and was probably the most popular LDS therapist that bishops referred their patients to, which would also mean, so I've worked as a referral source. So I've never worked for LDS family services or social services. I've never worked directly for the church. But when I opened my private practice in Killeen, Texas, because I was LDS and a therapist, bishops would refer clients to me for counseling services. And then when those families could not pay for those services, then the church would pay for them. So I think that one of the things that's really significant here is, as of right now, I know the gist. I know that there's child abuse. I know that some of these charges have to do with Jodi's counsel as a quote unquote licensed professional with regards to pornography use and masturbation. But I think one of the things that's really poignant here is that if she was working as the primary LDS counseling referral source for the LDS church, then the Mormon church was most likely paying from tithing and fast offering funds for the services that she provided.
Well, we haven't actually learned much about her from that first video, but one of the things that came up that I thought was interesting that will probably cross over to her story as well was the viewer was talking about how popular Ruby Franke was, and
Right.
the implied message there was that I thought I could trust her. And of course she didn't say that, but that's just kind of the implied message I get. And we talk about implied messages a lot, but the idea that because she was so popular, she could be trusted, or the idea that because if you're vlogging basically your home, and so
Mhm.
the idea is that if you're vlogging your home, that then you see everything, and I don't think that that's actually reality.
Right.
And so I think that they kind of get this false sense of reality. Well, they're vlogging their home. They must be showing us everything. Wow, this is crazy. This is awesome or bad or whatever. Like the reporter said, the most famous or infamous. And so just this idea that because it's a reality show, they show everything. And of course they never do.
Right. Well, and I watched a documentary. I think it was Jana Duggar. It may have been Jill Duggar. I don't remember which one. It was recent though. And she talked about how, with all these video cameras and crews in their home all the time, that it was like this invasion of privacy to show their everyday
Right.
things, except that you have to understand that those things are edited down
Mm-hmm.
to a video. And so depending on what you want your audience to see, that's, one of the reasons why I would never want to vlog our family is, one, I don't want my children to be exposed in their worst moments.
Right.
But I'm not a fan of presenting only when we shine. Because do we shine? Well, yeah, at times we shine, and at other times we are totally fucked up.
Right.
Trust me, those moments are in the family too, but most of the time it's just the mundane. But it's, even when you're seeing these vlogs, you're getting a false perception of what
Right.
the family life is representing, which means that, what did they say? There were like over, 2 million or 2 billion?
2.5 million at their peak. 2.5
2.5
million viewers.
million with an M at their
Yeah.
peak. Viewers. I mean, this story is going to shock a lot of people, which will feel like a betrayal for a lot of the fans of that family.
Right. Well, you're always going to lose context too. I mean, unless you're watching the freaking Truman Show, which was a 24-hour thing, right?
Right.
You're just going to miss context. You're going to miss positive and negatives and everything. Yeah. It's a tough thing to do, to put your life, your marriage, your family on display
Mhm.
like that. And I don't know that I've ever seen anything positive come from it aside from viewership.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
you get money from it, but I don't think I've ever seen anything positive as a family that comes from it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's really important to point out that even the Truman Show, if something was going on that they didn't want the viewership to see, they just switched cameras. I mean, obviously it's a fictional show,
Right.
but they still had editing power. It was, you know, we lost Truman for a little while in the show.
Let's
like
a YouTube
do all of these.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I want to say is that I just kind of want to inform the public about is that when I was working as a referral source for the LDS Church, when I had my private practice, as a licensed professional counselor, I was still obligated to provide evidence-based treatment. I had to follow the ethics of the licensing board, both in Texas and the national, so the ACA, which is the American Counseling Association. And it was just good practice to also follow the Social Worker Association ethics and the psychiatric ethics and those types of things. And so as we move forward, you know, one of the reasons I hear all the time, well, you know, we got marriage counseling, but not from an LDS therapist. Really what I'm hearing is it's not the LDS therapist that's the problem. It's that so often LDS therapists are practicing outside the standards of our licensing laws, outside of the ethics, especially in Mormonism, where it's such a small community where we end up getting into some conflicts of interest. And I know even for me, there are times where those conflict of interest or those dual relationship issues come up. And, you know, the client and I have to kind of talk about where are the boundaries and how are we going to navigate this in order to be working in the best interest of the client. And I want to say that if ever there's a question about how to proceed ethically, all I have to do is call the board. I just call them and ask them the question. And I have free advice at any time by calling the board and saying, this is what's going on for me. What are your recommendations in order for me to follow those ethical guidelines?
I think there's one other problem too.
Okay.
When it comes to this, when you're talking about ethics and stuff, is that I think that for some therapists, and I couldn't even begin to guess how many, but I think that for some therapists who are LDS, the problem is that the church will trump everything in their heads, in their minds. Well, yeah, maybe this isn't as ethical as it ought to be according to this, but because of this church relationship,
my religious
I'm going to go ahead
culture.
and do that.
Yeah, my religious culture says otherwise, and Jesus trumps.
Right. Like the idea of, you know, the evidence that suggests that, you know, masturbation is healthy or that pornography within limits is okay or even healthy for a marriage. If your church is teaching absolutely not, then you might fall into that situation where ethically you're obligated to say, well, the research demonstrates that this is okay. Right. You might decide not to say that but your religion tells you under no circumstances is this okay. Yeah. So that I can see that getting in the way of the ethics as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree. Thank you, Mason. All right. Are we ready for the next clip?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. All right.
Unless something goes disastrously wrong in the first session, it's hard to tell if you're dealing with a poor therapist. I can vouch for that. Or rather, a noticeably poor therapist. Even proponents of therapy will tell you that it can take a while to get an idea if your therapist is a good fit. So it takes a long time to even figure out if you've got a good therapist at all.
Can we talk about what good therapist means?
Yeah, and good fit.
Yeah. So everything in connections is broken down into truth or distortion. It's not broken down into good or bad. So I really encourage people not to use the words of, you know, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. Instead, everything is looked at and scrutinized through the lens of truth or distortion. And that's why this is so powerful. So if I'm your trainer and you're sitting across from me, you can know exactly if I'm telling you principles of truth because you can scrutinize principles of truth. You know what principles of truth look like. You know when someone's being sincere. You can see it, you can feel it. You know when someone's being humble, when they're being authentic. when they truly are being thoughtful and compassionate towards you. You know when someone's sincerely wanting you to be responsible for yourself, or they're taking responsibility for themselves. So this isn't about like, is this person good for me? It's about, is this person teaching me principles that actually govern healing? That's what this is about. And so, you know, I hope that there's mental health people out there that aren't just doing therapy, but they're doing coaching and other modalities of healing that are teaching principles of truth. If you are receiving principles of truth, you will recognize it and you will start changing. The one thing that is consistent, Ruby, that I get across the board when I was doing therapy, if you will, I was learning principles of truth. I had been taught them from a spiritual source, and I was sharing them with my clients. And I was not teaching them theories of you know, that humans had created. I was teaching them about, you need to be responsible for yourself. And I watched people and my own life transform right before my eyes. This isn't something that I just believe in. I have watched thousands of people change as a result of them using their agency and choosing truth. So it wasn't like, oh, she's a good counselor. Most people didn't like me. And the reason they didn't like me is because I was inviting them to be accountable. And a lot of people are not interested in being accountable. They're interested in just complaining. And I knew that that wasn't going to help them with finding joy or having peace.
Well, what I was interested in when I was looking for a therapist, we went through a couple. When I say we, Kevin and I, my husband, and we weren't looking for a good therapist. I was looking for someone who would side with me, and he was looking for someone who would side with him.
That's what a good therapist, somebody who sides.
She's the best therapist we've ever had. She's the worst therapist we've ever had. She doesn't agree with anything. She thinks I'm the problem. Well, that's why I love her.
Yeah, that's really common. If you're a therapist out there watching that, don't you know that? That's what goes on. But when you start teaching principles of truth, when you learn principles of truth,
it's not about me.
It wasn't about siding.
And it's not about Kevin. It's about our choices that we're using, and if our choices were in truth or in distortion. And so there's no taking sides. It's hey, I'm taking the side of connection. I'm on both of your sides.
Exactly.
And here's where your choices are, and here's where your choices are. And it was very clear.
Oh God. Oh my.
Well, I see a lot of giggling going on in the background.
Okay. Well, my first question. I'm sorry. I was laughing. My first question is, so what the fuck is a principle of truth? That's
Well, I can tell you from her perspective, like she's talking about it and it's implied again, and it's just my interpretation, but it feels like her idea of spiritual truth. She even said it. I had a spiritual source.
Right.
Well, then you're talking about whatever.
Bias.
Right. You're talking about whatever your religious context is. In this case, it's Mormonism, but whatever your religious context is or spiritual context, it feels very much like she's inviting bias into her situation and using that to form the way that she counsels people. Right. And of course, I'm not a counselor, but that doesn't sound appropriate.
Well, right. I could tell that she's definitely coming at counseling from a Mormon lens because she's using Mormon vernacular.
Right.
But the other thing is that she says, most of my clients don't like me. Hello. That means you're doing something wrong. Like wrong. If most of your clients don't like you, something's wrong. So I'm going to say this. Generally, at any time, session 1 to session 6,000, doesn't matter. If you feel uncomfortable or like there's an issue with your therapist, fire them. I've been fired before. I actually got fired recently by somebody, and their reason was because I was scatterbrained and I had canceled several appointments. Now, what they didn't know was that I was in MS flare. My nephew passed away, and I don't remember, something else had happened. And so I had canceled 3 appointments, and then I had confirmed an appointment after they had told me they couldn't make it. So for them, having somebody that presented as organized and like they had their life together was very important. And I'm going to be honest, they're not wrong. I did not present as organized over the last few weeks. And so they said, hey, we're going to terminate our relationship. We're just not comfortable. It happens, and that's okay. But it's also a great time for introspection as a counselor, is to be able to say, okay, where was I off on that? Usually for me, what I tell my clients is after session 1, you should walk away feeling a little bit of connection with your counselor. And then I tell them, don't trust it. I'm like, because when you first come into counseling, you're usually raw and vulnerable. When I've got couples desperate, right? Which makes you very vulnerable to latch on and connect very quickly if the counselor is good at validating your emotions, or if I'm good at hearing what you're saying and you haven't been heard in a really long time, most likely you're going to feel pretty comfortable after that first session, especially with a well-trained counselor. I generally tell my clients to give it 3 or 4 sessions where, we've had enough time for them to make sure that I'm getting what they're saying, that they feel heard, and that I am working from a place that supports their worldview and their goals. So whenever I get a client in, my goal is not for them to accept what I believe is truth or this distortion stuff. I mean, there is such thing as thought distortions. And I think that's where Jodi's getting really dangerous, is she's using some, vocabulary words. Thought distortions means that you are, let me just pull it up. For me, the way that I interpret thought distortion is that your perspective of your reality isn't making sense. And so I'm going to challenge that, but I'm not going to insert what the truth is or what the reality is for the client. I'm going to challenge the client to do that on their own. Right. So let's see the thought distortions. So thought distortions are black and white thinking, all or none thinking. I never have anything interesting to say. Jumping to conclusions. The doctor's going to tell me I have cancer. Our team lost because of me. So they're talking about thought distortions as being all or nothing, black and white thinking. But the way that I will do it is like mind reading. That's where I see it and identify it the most in my clinic, is when my client is like, well, this is what everybody thought of me, or this is the truth, even though I don't have evidence to support it. And so the way that I would challenge truth, I wouldn't call it truth, because truth is subjective.
Well, can I insert a thought here?
Oh, no, of course. Go ahead.
I think that if you take this idea from the first video, your popularity creates a bond of trust. Well, now you're talking about, because this therapist is popular, lots of people see them, there's this underlying thought that, well, I can trust this person. Mm-hmm. They start talking about giving you truth instead of distortions. Well, now you're led to believe that what they tell you is what you need to hear. And it doesn't allow you to critically think about what's being said. Mm-hmm. It doesn't allow you to go to practice and say, yeah, that's not working for me. Because it's been labeled as truth, you don't have that option. Right. And that happens, of course, a lot with the church as well. So now you're combining this therapy with a religious context. You've lost the ability to disconnect the two, because you've labeled and she's labeled what I'm telling you is truth. There's no arguing with that, rather than saying, and I've heard you say this before, look, these are some principles that I find that work really well for people. Let's try them on. Let's see how they work for you. Mm-hmm. If they don't work, let's maybe re-examine, make sure that you're using them correctly. Right. And then if they still don't work, then we'll try something else, or you find another counselor or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you start labeling, what I'm going to tell you is exactly right, this is the way that you need to do this, you've already forced your opinion onto somebody else. and the church allows that.
Well, and if
The church
Jodi
creates it.
Yeah, well, and you're talking a little bit about the power differential. So there's always a power differential in your counseling room, and it's the counselor's job to try and eliminate that power differential over time.
Right.
And really what happens for me is that by the time my clients are finishing with therapy, they feel like we're equal, and like more like I'm a mentor and a guide. Like I'm holding their hand for those times where they are like, oh, I'm kind of questioning, where am I at here? And I just kind of help keep them on the path. Whereas when they first come in, it's like, I need you to fix me. So when you have a counselor that's really popular, where your church and your bishop and your peers and the media are all saying this counselor is amazing, and then you go in and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling like this is a good fit for me, because you have all these people backing that therapist saying this is the best thing ever. You stay when all of your natural red flags are like, run the other way.
Not any different really than a Mormon questioning Russell and Nelson, or a Catholic questioning the Pope, or the Church of Scientology questioning whoever, I don't even know their name, but that idea that if you cannot question your pastor, you cannot question your leaders, then you put yourself in a power differential that is very difficult to get out of. And it sounds like, and of course this is just a blurb, but it sounds like that's kind of what she's setting up. Whether she's doing it on purpose or not, who knows? But that's what it sounds like she's setting up.
Right. Well, and I want to talk about, I'm going to assume it was Ruby that was speaking, the idea of in marriage counseling, the couples come in and they're like, oh, I want a counselor that's on my side. Oh, I want a counselor on my side. Everybody does that. And it's not that I want them on my side. That is, that might be how it presents when they first come into the counseling room. But really, it's that both partners or it can be more than two partners. What they really want is a counselor who understands, hears them, and advocates for them in the relationship. And really, when I've got couples coming in that very first session, it's my job to make sure that all parties have a chance to speak. That if one party is overriding everything, that I'm like, hang on, I want to hear the other side, that I guide that and I protect that, so that both parties walk away feeling like, hey, that counselor has my back. I feel like they're knowledgeable. And I'm absolutely,
I feel validated, basically.
Right. Well, and understood.
Yeah.
I feel seen. I feel validated. I feel understood. Right. And for me, I'm going to let them know, if you guys don't feel like I'm able to have both of your backs, like if you feel like I'm biased or favoring one or the other of you, then this is not a good fit. Like when people come in and see me on that first session, I tell them, if for any reason, if there's a personality conflict, you don't like my style, because like I share a lot of, I call it self-disclosure. And when people don't like it, they're going to say, she talks a lot about herself. Well, I explain to my clients, if I'm disclosing something about me, I want you to take that and parallel it with what's going on. And I work really hard to make sure if I share a little blip about me, that I then tie my story back into the clients as a way for them to parallel. And I do that because I believe that we learn best through stories. It's how I learn best. If I give a relatable story, and when I talk about myself in that session, I'm telling you my story, so that way if I get the details wrong, because if I get the details wrong on your story, your defensive brain sabotages the lesson I'm trying to teach. So I'm going to tell you a story about me because it feels safer for the client. But a lot of people, that does not work for them. And so I will tell them, this is how I do it. If ever you feel like I'm talking about me and not focusing on you, you need to let me know, like tell me, or if it makes you uncomfortable, if you don't like the style, let me know. I have a list of referrals in my area, within like a 60-mile radius that I'm going to refer you to. Like if you don't have a counselor saying, if I'm not a good fit, you tell me what it is that doesn't feel like a good fit, so that I can help you find somebody. Because I will tell my clients, I've had a couple say, hey, Sarah, this isn't a good fit for me. Or, hey, we need some individual counseling as well as whatever you're doing, I'm going to be a mentor in helping them find somebody. And I'm going to say, hey, Jane Doe over here, she practices, she's very matronly, she's very motherly, she's very good at listening. Like, I'm a terrible interrupter. So if I feel like you're rambling on in session, be quiet, Mason.
On that
Right.
note, there's a lot of videos. We probably need to move to, a new one here.
I know. I'm getting there. But my point being that I'm going to tell you, hey, Dr. Doe over here is really assertive. I'm an assertive. I'm an in your face. If you're rambling, I'm going to interrupt you and say, hey, are we still on topic or are you avoiding? But if you need somebody that's not that assertive, Miss Doe over here is much better at this. And they practice from an evidence-based practice. And I've seen good results coming from their clinic.
Right.
And
they're different, but still working from a good place.
Right. What I'm seeing from this Jodi lady is you're going to come to me and you better accept what I say as truth.
Right.
Which is a thought distortion. That is a distortion. But also if she says most of my clients don't like me, that's a problem.
Kind of almost I see in that the idea that must mean that I'm doing a good job, because she then follows it up with, they don't like me because I'm telling them what they need to hear.
Right.
And sometimes I'm sure that's necessary. Sometimes your clients are not going to like what you have to say.
Absolutely.
But if they don't like you, that's a reflection on the fact that a lot of things are not going the right way. And so I think that's, it's, for me, I have to relate it to almost this idea that the church talks about, well, the world is here and we're here, and then the world goes here and then we move up, and, they're proud of the fact that they're behind the world. And you know what, on some things, fine. Like maybe that's a good thing, a positive thing for them. But on a lot of things, that's not okay. And what has been consistent that we've talked about is the way that people are treated. The way that people are treated, they're behind and they should be ahead if they're actually led by God or Jesus Christ, who holy hell said, treat people the way that you want to be treated. They're not doing that. And it almost feels like what she's doing is kind of an extension of that. We're going to tell you how this is. Like it, don't like it. I come from a place of truth. So, deal with it.
One last thing before that comment, Mason, I love that you said that. And I was pointing at you like, yes, what you said.
By the way, when you pointed on the screen, it shows the other direction. So there you go.
That's why I was like, my pointing is, yes, Mason, I'm going to point at you with my left hand. No, great point. But if my patient or client does not like me and does not feel safe with me, when I point out a hard thing that they're struggling with when I'm like, hey, it feels like you're not being honest, that's traumatizing. I'm not going to call a patient out like that until the trusting relationship is there.
Yeah.
So this whole, my patients don't like me because I tell them hard truths. Yes, you go to counseling to get hard truths. Yes, you will feel uncomfortable at times. But if you don't like your counselor, you need a new counselor, because 80% of the efficacy of counseling is found in how much you trust and feel comfortable with your counselor.
And it sounds like in this case,
run away.
Right. It sounds like in this case that if you're not trusting that counselor, it's probably because you're not feeling understood.
Right.
You're not feeling like they're actually listening to you rather than them expecting you to listen to them. Same thing from religious context. There's a lot of, when you go to see a bishop, for instance, a lot of times it's that the bishop expects you to be listening to them rather than the bishop taking the time to listen to you. And of course that makes all the difference. You can't make a real judgment on somebody's life or behavior without understanding what was going on.
Right.
What led you to make these decisions? It's not just, well, I committed adultery. You have to understand what was going on in this person's life.
Yeah.
To know if that was even what they wanted.
Absolutely. Well, and therapy is a buffet, and a good therapist is going to say, you take what works for you. You leave what doesn't. And if I'm going down a path of things that don't work for you, let me know, because I want to utilize what resonates with you to help
Right.
you get to where you want to be. So this whole idea that you're coming into counseling with truth and distortion and it's that black and white, that's not healthy.
No black and white. We don't want
Right.
black and white.
There's some undue influence going
It's
on
either
there.
this way or that way,
Mhm.
right? It's either
Yeah.
God is influencing my life or Satan is influencing my life, and it's all the time. And
Well,
that's it doesn't add up.
Therapy isn't about learning truth. Therapy is about learning how to be curious so that you can change and shift and interpret things in a way
Right.
that works better for what your goals
Right.
are.
Even
Mhm.
if you look at it as like tools, we talk all the time about, I just didn't have the tool. Well, if you
Mhm.
look at a hammer, if the hammer is the right tool for the job, it's the right tool for the job, but that doesn't have anything to do with truth. Like the spirit told me the hammer is what I needed. Well, that's crap, right?
Yeah.
No, I looked at the projects and I realized I need something that will pound this into place. I needed to be able to pull something out. So
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with truth. It has to do with what is applicable to this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
All
right.
righty. Next video.
Oh, good. We're on a roll.
Yeah, you talk too much.
Yeah, it's me.
Something goes disastrously wrong in the first session, it's hard to tell if you're dealing with a poor therapist. I can vouch for that. Or rather, a noticeably poor therapist. Even proponents of therapy will tell you that it can take a while.
We already saw
This
this.
is the same video.
Yeah, it's the same video. Next video.
So it takes a long time to even figure out if you've got.
I don't know if Alex can hear us.
Can we talk
Hang
about
on. Oh, there we go. That's the same video. All right. Just kidding. Next video. Do, 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 do.
No humming. No whistling.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, I fear that he may have become corrupted, particularly the app TikTok that I hear from other women in my church is propagating homosexual lifestyle. Yes, that's true. It is. I hold myself partly to blame for this, as I allowed him free access to his smartphone since age 15. Oh, Mom. So you said I feel partly to blame. This isn't about blame. Blame's not going to help you. You are culpable. You are responsible. You put into that boy's hands something very dangerous, much more dangerous than a weapon, much more dangerous than a gun. You know, people say, well, guns kill. Well, cell phones will kill you spiritually.
Not to blame. And then she blamed.
Yes.
And the cell phone made him gay.
Can you play the last like 10 seconds of that video again?
Just play the whole video again, Alex, actually, because play the whole thing again. Wow. Okay, and it says, so hang on, pause.
Okay, I fear that he may have become corrupted, particularly the app TikTok.
So this said the for those that are just listening and not seeing this, the little video thing, it says TikTok made my son gay.
Yeah.
Mormon therapist, in quotations, Jodi Hildebrandt speaks to a private group of Mormon moms about homosexuality. All right, go ahead and start that video over for us, Alex. Thank you.
That I hear from. Okay, I fear that he may have become corrupted, particularly the app TikTok that I hear from other women in my church is propagating homosexual lifestyle. Yes, that's true. It is.
Can you pause it right there?
I hope.
So it's funny to me, the idea that, and of course I've been in this situation. So let me just speak from my own experience here. Because again, not a therapist, but I've felt this way before. The idea that society is creating homosexuality. And it just doesn't fall in line with the research that demonstrates that's not the case. But the idea then is that you're afraid of these things. So what she's going to do now is propagate a fear of TikTok, a fear of cell phones, a fear of freedom, because the mom talks about how I gave him access to a smartphone from the time he was 15. It's funny when she started saying that, it's my fault because I gave him access to a phone ever since he was, I was sure she was going to say like 9 or 10, but she said 15. Like, so I'm just, just the ideas that are being propagated here by these people is completely without any evidence. It is
Well,
a
and
fear-based approach.
yeah, 100%. And, genetics, our research on genetics is so advanced nowadays. And there are markers on our DNA genomes and whatnot that demonstrate similarities across our gay population or across our lesbian, basically the LGBT population. Now, there is no such thing as a gay gene. They've made that abundantly clear. But there are certain markers and changes that we are seeing in people that are gay. And so what the research is demonstrating right now is that you're born this way. There is nothing that's going to make you gay.
Well, and just
It's like,
and just
it's not like I'm
flip it
going to see a
around.
picture and be like, right, what
And just
what
flip it
made you
around.
heterosexual?
Right. I didn't grow up deciding who I was going to be attracted to. It's even more like I like brunettes, right? Like I didn't decide that. It's not like I walked around and said, "Oh, no, blonde's she's
No.
ugly." Like I don't do
No.
that.
I'm interrupting you, Mason. You like brunettes because your favorite movie was Aladdin. And when you were a kid and your mom let you watch it so much. And Jasmine has blackish brunette hair. And that is why you like brunettes. It's your mom's fault you fucking like brunettes, Mason.
No,
Come on.
your theory is off, and let me tell you why. Your timeline is off. Aladdin came out in what, 1993, 1994? I was 16 years old.
But that's
It had already been established.
But that's the perfect age. I mean, didn't you hear? He was 15.
Anyway, the point being, flip it around, right? Like I didn't decide as a kid I'm going to be heterosexual. I looked around and I was attracted to women. I was attracted to girls. I've never had any attraction to men. But I don't think I would have any abhorrence of the idea either if I hadn't been taught that it was wrong.
Right.
Like you want to be attracted to men, or a woman wants to be attracted. A woman feels attracted. I can't say wants it. That's a bad word. A woman feels attracted to a woman. A man feels attracted to a man.
Right. This is
Flip
like
it
saying,
around. I didn't make that decision.
Right. This is like saying I am heterosexual. I'm straight because I saw my mom and dad kissing once.
Right.
Just once. Just once. I saw it. So now I'm heterosexual, because obviously we have to, don't your kids even see one time gay men or gay women kissing, or somebody that's trans. We don't even expose them one time, because that one exposure is going to completely alter their hormones. Like it's going to suddenly change the oxytocin and the neurotransmitters in their brain, and they're going to suddenly have arousal for the wrongs. Like it's ludicrous, people.
But what
doesn't work that way.
TikTok and outside influences are doing is they're normalizing normal.
Yes.
Right. They're not causing people to be gay.
Yes.
They're not causing people to be homosexual. They're allowing people to express the fact that they're homosexual
in a manner that is safe. We're eliminating bullying.
Right.
We're eliminating the not bullying, but the murder and the stoning.
Thanks,
and the
Julia.
spitting. Hi, Julia. Now, having said that, I do agree with, we don't want to give kiddos unfettered access to a smartphone or a tablet from the time they're itty bitty. And the reason, the reasons are because, like, when you're little, the things that we're seeing in the research is watching cartoons and being on social media. It's overstimulating for the brain. It makes the dopamine misfire in your brain in a way that your reward systems get ski-wampus. It stops you from being able to communicate face-to-face with people because you're over dependent on that device. And then the exposure to, like, it's really easy for little kids to be exposed to violent or sexual content before their frontal cortexes are ready for that. That's where the problem comes in. So my advice to most parents is a gradual exposure to it. So, like, when they're little, let's limit their time. This is not eliminate their time. It's limit their time, limit their access to age appropriate material. As your child enters middle school, I'm going to be honest, I hate social media in middle school because kiddos have enough hard time with all the hormone changes
And
giving them a
bullying
phone
and all
can
the stuff
add
that's
to
going on.
it.
Yeah.
But for me, by the time they hit high school, especially by 15, 16, their brains are developed enough at that point that they're able to better self monitor. And so we give guidelines and we loosen the reins and we allow them that, you know, she used the term agency. I'm going to use the term free will. That's when you allow your kids to start testing and utilizing their free will more independently of the parent.
Because they've already learned how.
Right. Because they've learned how.
Right. Because they've already learned how.
With a safe place to fall. Like, you know, one of our kiddos got into some trouble with some Snapchat and ended up getting, you know, some coercion and stuff from some, you know, scammers and whatnot. Safe
But
place.
he came to us.
Right. He was like,
He came to us.
you know, he got like 10 minutes in and he's like, whoo, holy shit. And then he said, Mom and Dad, I'm putting my phone down after I send this text, but I need your help as soon as you get home. Yeah. We got home. He showed us what was going on and we got him safe, like right away. They did not get money from him. They did not, like, we were able to help him stop it. That's what you want, but you have to have a trusting environment. And if you are policing everything your teenagers are doing, they are going to rebel. They will not trust you.
Helicopter mom, all that kind of stuff, right?
Like, as you hit those teens, you got to start backing up and being a safe place for your kiddos to land. They are going to fuck it up. Let them.
So the last line actually that I wanted Alex to replay the video because I don't need it now. You can.
No, I want him to finish it up for me though still. So go ahead and say your statement.
Yeah. So
you can go ahead,
the last line that I hadn't quite written down, I then remembered, was that she said that cell phones kill you spiritually. And I'm just trying to figure out what the hell she's talking about spirituality for as a counselor in this context, right? She is a Mormon talking to Mormons saying that cell phones are the devil. And that's just not accurate. Even Mormon leadership talks about how that's not the case. Like, they carry around their tablets and their phones because they're an incredible resource, but she goes from saying, we're not going to do blame, but you're culpable, which is another word for blame.
Right. I put that on here. Tell me the difference. That's loading the language right
and
there.
I think that there is a little bit of difference between blame and culpability, but basically that's the same thing. So she goes from saying, we're not blaming you because that's not helpful, to blaming you, and then talking about how cell phones kill us spiritually. That is not relevant in this situation. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you can get away with it because you started off on the wrong premise. You've started from the premise that your outside influences cause gayness. And if you do that, if you start from the wrong premise, you're always going to end up with screwy theories and screwy ideas because you've accepted something that you call truth, because of course she only speaks the truth. You've started with something that is quote unquote truth and led to incredible harm. Now this parent is going to live, because she got good advice from a terrific therapist, she's going to live with the idea that she caused her son to be gay. Yeah. When that's crap.
It's bullshit. Hey, Mason.
Yeah.
Mic drop. I just threw my pencil over there trying to mic drop you. Hang on. Let me get a better moments.
But yeah, you start, and Mormonism does this all the time too. You start with the wrong premise as if it's truth, and that leads you to all kinds of other things that you now accept as truth without any kind of critical thought. Right. You know, I had a good feeling about the Book of Mormon, so everything else associated with it must be true. And now I've got to accept abuse. I've got to accept the fact that they misuse tithing and they just don't care. I've got to accept all these other things because of this incorrect premise.
Right. Well, and you know, something that really stands out to me is, my brain just went blank. Ha, squirrel.
You need a thought bubble.
I need a thought bubble. I need a thought, because I didn't interrupt you, but I also didn't write down. See, I've got my little notebook right here. I write it down. I remember. Spirituality and religious belief, two completely separate things.
Yes.
You know, from a behavioral health standpoint, we generally look at spirituality as the way that we connect with other living things in deep, meaningful in deep, meaningful ways.
Right. So
And
can cell phones kill spirituality?
No, it actually can increase it if you're talking about connection. I mean, depending on how you're using it, but how are cell phones? Yeah. Anyway,
I
okay,
suppose
I
it
gotta stop.
can. I suppose it can if you have connected, or the people who are important or have authority in your life around you have connected spirituality with religiosity, right? So
Yes.
if
Love it.
now, because I'm gay, I can't go to the temple anymore, I can't hold the priesthood, I can't get married forever, my spirituality is toast. But the reality is your connection with your religion is going to suffer. You're absolutely right. But your connection with yourself and with the people around you does not have to, if you can learn to separate the two.
Right. And really, let's talk about the research again. Cell phones can
What?
make you
You want to talk
more
about research?
I know, damn it, research. Cell phones can make you less connected with the people around you with overuse. It's not the
Right.
cell phone, it's the way you're utilizing it. If I'm constantly, like right here,
Right.
in my video games and whatnot, and I'm not experiencing the world around me. Okay. So, but again, all things in moderation. If I drink 24 cups of coffee a day, coffee's probably not good for me.
Right.
If I drink
Well,
my
then she
6
could have
ounces
addressed
a
that.
day, I'm okay. This is a good amount. If I drink more than 12 ounces a day, Sarah gets a little jittery, but one of Sarah's best friends drinks 24 ounces a day and does great with it. So
Right.
moderation, and you have to recognize your own brain stuff. All right.
Well,
Can
and
we
it's just the way that she the way that she addressed it
Right.
wasn't appropriate.
Well, again, she addressed it all or nothing. Go ahead. Let's
Yeah.
finish this second up. I got to hear this end thing again.
Hold myself partly to blame for this, as I allowed him free access to his smartphone since age 15. Oh, Mom. So you said I feel partly to blame. This isn't about blame. Blame's not going to help you. You are
And then she
culpable. You are
blames.
responsible. You put into that boy's hands something very dangerous, much more dangerous than a weapon, much more dangerous than a gun. You know, people say, well, guns kill. Well, cell phones will kill you spiritually.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, that's such
There it is.
bullshit. Okay. My
Yeah.
official professional opinion of that is that's total bullshit. And as a therapist,
Is that a therapeutic word too? Is that
oh, I use bullshit in therapy all the time.
right? Oh, Mom. Yeah, good job, Alex. Oh,
Right.
Mom.
No, but seriously, when she says, oh, Mom, yes, she's like, oh, Mom, this isn't about blame, but you're culpable. You're responsible.
And responsible. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Blame.
Blame isn't going to help you, but let me blame you. Like,
Well-
you don't blame yourself. That's not going to
Well,
be
and
helpful. But let me, with my power differential, make the
Right.
blame really, really stick.
Right. Let me
You
just
might get over your
shame
own
you.
blame. You might get over your own blame, but when I tell you you're culpable, you're going to hang on to that one forever.
Well,
Here
and
you
the
go.
thing is that
If-
as therapists, we are responsible for continued education. We are responsible for learning these things. We are responsible for how we approach people.
Yeah.
And that, what she just did, is not therapeutic
Yeah.
at all.
Right.
It's not evidence-based.
That's the real problem right
Okay.
there. We should probably move on.
I need to throw something, and this is just the second video. I gotta
Don't. This is the third video. Don't.
All right,
throw my
go ahead,
Rubik's
Alex.
Cube.
I can't throw your Rubik's Cube. My
Right. That's
my
good. It's
webcam is
protected.
on
Okay.
it. My shoes.
All right,
are-
Alex. Next one.
I fear that he may have become corrupted, particularly the
Yep,
act
not that one. Yep.
that I hear from other women in my church is propagating homosexual lifestyle. Yes,
Yes,
that's true.
next video.
Yes.
All right, this is our first. Oh my God, I just saw
So,
that. Okay, pause,
if you
Alex.
don't
Pause it. Jodi Hildebrandt is back at it again. She thinks rape is. Oh, okay. I gotta hold on to something.
She thinks rape is a choice.
Rape is
Oh,
a choice.
good. I cannot wait for this 2 minutes
Yeah.
of.
So trigger
Yes.
warning. This lady's insane, and we're talking about. Okay, go ahead.
Want to have a baby, then do not use your agency to engage in sexual contact. Now, I know that nobody talks about that anymore. Like nobody. I don't hear that from anyone, like abstinence. That used to be around when I was a kid, abstinence.
She hasn't been in this Arizona
Nobody
school
says that
district
anymore.
recently.
Because everybody feels like they have a right to just do whatever they want. And then they have these
Can you pause it for a
consequences,
second?
these outcomes.
Oh,
I just want to pull out the one obvious thing here is the all or
all
nothing
inclusive words,
right?
Uh-huh.
Nobody's talking about abstinence because everybody just wants to do what they want. It's again, you're starting from a premise that you say is true that isn't true. So if she sets it up this way that nobody's talking about abstinence, so it's all your fault, that's where she's going, right? She's going to this point of blame because nobody wants to talk about the right way, which is abstinence.
Right. And I love this comment from Julia. She says, and our spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual lives are more important than our physical bodies. Yeah, that's bullshit. But when I'm going to speak right now about my therapeutic experience. So I have worked with several teenagers, male and female. And from when I started 12 years ago to today, the attitude about sex is vastly different. And what I'm seeing is that my clients, my teenage clients today are more educated. They are educated about just the logistics of how it works, the consequences of sex. They know more about, hey, it can be emotionally connective. And so I want to wait until it's with somebody special. Like these are the things I'm hearing from my clients. But the other piece is, both of my girls and my both males and females feel more confident in being able to say no. When I was a teenager, I thought I was obligated. I felt like it was all my fault. But what I'm hearing,
damned if you do and damned if you don't in that situation. Right.
Damned if I do, damned if I don't. So whatever. Yeah. But what I hear my kiddos saying is they have the power to say no. What I also hear my kiddos saying is, if my partner says no, I have to stop.
Right.
And so I would say that as we've talked about it, more youth are practicing abstinence until they feel better, until they feel more secure, until they feel more connected with a partner. I believe the teenage pregnancy rate has gone down substantially, which is huge. And then when our kiddos are practicing sex, they're doing it safer.
Yeah. An offshoot of that too. She hasn't really talked about the rape part yet. And I'm in anticipation of the BS, but Yanni Masterson was just sentenced to 30 years to life for 2 counts of rape. Like the message, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. Like I haven't made my own opinions, but the message there is, I don't care who the hell you are or who you think you are.
Right.
That's not okay. And
because we're more accountable.
Somebody essentially just got pounded into the dirt because of counts of rape. If that doesn't send the message no means no, then crazy. And really the message now that we're trying to switch to, which I think is great, is yes means yes. The idea that this is a consensual thing. If you want to be involved in this kind of stuff, married, unmarried, whatever, yes means yes. And so, yeah, we probably better keep going there.
Of STDs or pregnancy or rape. And they don't want to take any responsibility for their participation in it. Now, when I say rape, what I'm talking about is you engage in a sexual relationship and then you may say, stop. And the person's like, I'm not stopping. I'm going to take what I want. I'm not talking about like someone attacks you and forces you. I'm talking about your participation. And then at some point you say, I don't want to do this anymore. And, because the person you're with just says, I don't care what you want, because that's the kind of person you've chosen to hook up with. So, Mom, I am saying this with so much love to you. Now you already have your child.
Did the video end or did we pause it? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Keep going, Alex.
It looks like it's ended.
Okay. I say this with so much love to you, Mom.
I ain't buying it.
Okay, it's number one. TMI. That's the end of the vid. Thanks, Alex. TMI. There have been times, Mason, in our marriage where something has been painful, and I have said, "I need you to stop," and you have stopped, and it has ended, like immediately. No matter. I mean, yes, it's frustrating. I can't speak as a man to just how frustrating, but you have stopped. So it's possible. Number one. Number two, sometimes you can't know what your partner is going to be like as a sexual, intimate partner until you're in that position.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Abusers are going to abuse.
And they're going to be exceptionally kind and manipulative until they get to that point.
Right.
So yeah, that's, again, it's just a bunch of BS that, well, that's the person that you chose to be with. That's crap, because for one, if I choose to be with someone and I'm with them for 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, and they're kind and they're appropriate with me, and so I want to be in that relationship, and then something happens 2 years down the road where I'm no longer okay with their treatment, the last 2 years doesn't matter. It does not matter if the 2 years have been great and now you want to rape me. The 2 years are gone. Like, this is about this decision now.
Right.
It's not
This
about
moment.
all the decisions that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And what she has done is she has made rape in that situation, and that is rape. She's made rape in that situation your fault.
Mm-hmm.
She's taken the no means no. She's taken the yes means yes, and she's once again put it on the woman, because of course that's where it mostly happens. She's put it on, let me say instead, she put it on the victim. She's put it on the person without the power. Because frankly, if I didn't want to stop as a husband, when you said that hurts, I could have forced myself.
Absolutely.
I could, I'm stronger than you. I can make this happen if I want to. But you've taken the power from the victim once again. The power we're trying to give to the victim for them to be able to say, no, this, I know that I thought I wanted, I thought I wanted this, but I've changed my mind.
Well, then
it's over. It's done. I've changed my mind. We're not doing this.
Right. Well, and then
the fact that I said 15 minutes ago this was okay doesn't matter anymore.
Right. There's lots of reasons to terminate sex in the middle, too. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but
right.
I want to say
go into that.
I want to say that marital rape is a thing. I've had lots of clients come in where there were circumstances, like maybe my partner was drunk or under the influence, or they didn't hear me, or they misread my signals, or it happens. Right. And accountability on the perpetrator's part, whether it was on purpose or on accident, because I've heard it on accident and seen the genuine remorse. Like I've seen that. It doesn't change the fact that the victim is traumatized. And so we have to be able to respond to that. But the other piece is, when you get in these systems where masturbation is not okay, then there isn't another option to necessarily deal with some of the frustration that comes. So, when I say stop, or you say stop, I need for this, for whatever reason, if there's still the urge, you've got two hands, maybe some toys, maybe some, again, TMI, but there are other ways that you can terminate, finish, and then reconnect. So yeah, this is
but only if the relationship and the healthy relationship between those individuals is the number one important thing. Yeah. But if, as a religious society, what you've made the number one important thing is your chastity, then the relationship may suffer. It's not always going to, but it may suffer because your priorities are incorrect.
Right. No means no. Yes means yes. I don't know means no. That means wait. That means slow down.
Right.
And stop means stop.
Right. Right.
And yeah, and again, abusers are going to manipulate. They are going to confuse you, or they may, I mean, some abusers are going to manipulate and confuse you and be the nicest person on the planet, and then flip as soon as
Right.
it's flipped.
Right.
And some of them are going to be very manipulative and pressuring. I mean, we
Right.
cannot underestimate how much the mind, our brain, is involved in the sexual intimacy and the relationship that is going on. So,
Right. And what she has done is she has perpetuated abuse. She's taken this
Yes.
idea, like what you mentioned for your
and
past in your book.
pause. She's perpetuated abuse. She's also perpetuating and deepening trauma. It's
Yeah.
I cannot
'cause-
even.
Well, what I was going to say is
She's
that
silencing the victim, and I want to strangle her right
Right.
now, which is bad. Go ahead.
in
Reese.
your situation, which you shared in your book, is that when that happened, you felt like you couldn't say no because you
Right.
had said yes. You felt like you then couldn't say no. But even worse, afterwards, it was your fault.
Yes.
Everything that had happened was your fault because you had said yes yesterday. And so what she's done here is she's perpetuated
Well,
abuse.
I'm going
and
to
she's
pause.
perpetuated trauma and blame.
I'm going to pause. In my case, in what you're reading in the book, it was my idea. It was my invitation.
Right.
And then when we got to it, I was like, oh, ugh. But I didn't feel like I could say no because of teachings like this. Like, it was not my partner's fault. It was not my partner's fault that he had no way of knowing that I wasn't ready because I didn't verbalize it, because my religious upbringing and the way that my dad had manipulated my understanding about sex was that if you invited, if you aroused, if you were responsible for this, if you were the one that got it started, the man cannot help himself. Therefore, you have to let it go. And that's destructive. It's destructive in every way.
And let me just add one thing too. You said it was your idea, but the way you describe it, I don't know that I would really agree with that. You talk about, I thought I had to because I didn't want to lose him. I thought that was the next step. Well, those are messages that you're getting from other people, including him. Right? Maybe he didn't ever overtly say it, but I guarantee there were covert things that led to, hey, at some point in time, this needs to happen.
I mean, to happen? No. I think want it to happen? Yes. No, the messaging that was the next step 100% came from my upbringing in my own home.
Right.
I don't think that blaming my I don't think that blaming my partner. I believe that my first partner, if I had said I'm not ready, would have slowed down despite how difficult it would have been. So, all right, next video.
And the person's like, I'm not stopping. I'm going to take what I want. I'm not talking about like someone attacks you and forces you.
So we're having
I'm talking about your participation.
Getting there.
Yeah, it's we just learning this new system. Go ahead.
Because they get so mad that they can't control what's going on, they turn right around and go give us a 1-star review.
Wait, hang on. Pause this. This says,
because we've been trying to make it really easy for you to give us a 5-star review.
All right. Jodi asks for connections. Hang on. Can you start that over, Alex, and then pause it so I can read? So this says, Jodi asks for connections, Google review. I'm guessing that connection spelled with an X must be the name of her business.
Well,
and
just go ahead and play it. But when that
1-star reviews, when that box
just go ahead and play
up,
it. But when that box comes up, just pause it so you can read that.
Because they get so mad.
Oh, too soon.
That they can't control what's going on. They pause.
Okay, there.
I wouldn't trust this company. They use brainwashing tactics to manipulate you. They intentionally make you feel bad about yourself and use slander. Please stay away from this company at all costs. They are a scam. Well, based on what's happened, I'm going to say that 1-star review was right on the money.
Yeah.
Well, and I get negative reviews. Like if you go to my Westbrook counseling page, you're going to see, I think I've got 2 1-star reviews. And one of them, it's obvious that there's some anger going on, and I won't comment as to why. I understand why, because I know the thing. But one of the things that they said was that I interrupt a lot. That's true. And when I get those negative reviews, like on my most recent negative review, they were like, she's scatterbrained and very unorganized. Guess what? Their experience with me, that's true. That was true. And so when you get a negative review as a counselor, it is, in my opinion, your responsibility to take a step back and say, okay, what about this negative review is accurate, like as is objectively true or factual, objectively factual.
Can we just listen to this too? Because I'd like to know where she's going.
Right. Well, but let me finish my statement. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, what's objectively factual about this? And then I'm going to say, okay, what is their perspective? What may have led them to make this review? And then what part can I say, okay, that's just not accurate, and move away? And I'm going to say that in the negative reviews that I've gotten, some of it is absolutely objectively factual. Right. Some of it is situational, and some of it is just, I'm pissed and I'm trying to harm somebody. And that's going to be there. And as I've been able to do that, that just makes me better. Like this is feedback from somebody. Like if somebody put this about me, I would need to say, ooh, I need to have a professional consult with somebody. And I need to be able to say, hey, this is what I remember. Can you check? Like, I want to be honest. I want to be open. Did I say something in a way, are you seeing anything, blah, 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 blah. And in order to check in with myself, because if somebody said that I was brainwashing them in therapy, I need to understand what happened in that session. And I just threw my pen again. I need to understand what happened in that session so that I can make sure. I need to ethically check in with myself. Right. So, all right, go ahead.
She started with, it makes me so angry when they leave a 1-star review. Like we've started
because
from
they don't like
the emotion instead of the reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and she's starting with, because they don't like what I have to say.
Right.
Well, they're allowed.
Right.
They're allowed to not like what you have to say. That's part of this process.
No, she already told us they can dislike her, but they have to accept what she says.
As truth. Yes. Go ahead.
They turn right around and go give us a 1-star review. Now, we've made it really easy for them to do that because we've been trying to make it really easy for you to give us a 5-star review. We've put the link on the bottom of every single post. So all you have to do is click the link and give us a 5-star review. That's as simple as it is. But you guys aren't doing it. I think we've had 5 people from the last time I asked, which was probably a month ago. 5 out of almost 9,000, 5 people give us a review. That's 5. And we've had probably 50 to 75 people give us 1-star reviews. So we started with a 5, and in 3 months we're down to like a 2. Aggression and evil has dominated our world.
Okay, pause again.
Too many of us that want to live in truth.
Okay, so this says they will
need to let it finish. You got 7 more. Oh
no, they will. Oh. They will ruin your family through mind control. This is something that she's putting up as
a review.
It says they will ruin your family through mind control. They don't want you to think for yourself and critically think. They want to shelter you. They are an actual cult. They also assaulted me, so I'm suing. Well.
Wow. Okay, let it finish.
Hang on. Pause it again. Do you find this review helpful? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, I do. All right. Go ahead. We'll play it one more time without the interruption. So, Alex, go ahead and finish this up. And then before Mason and I comment, we'll play it one more time for our listeners.
Please. I don't understand why you won't do it.
Wow.
Go ahead and let's shut up this time.
They get so mad that they can't control what's going on. They turn right around and go give us a 1-star review. Now, we've made it really easy for them to do that because we've been trying to make it really easy for you to give us a 5-star review. We've put the link on the bottom of every single post. So all you have to do is click the link and give us a 5-star review. That's as simple as it is. but you guys aren't doing it. I think we've had 5 people from the last time I asked, which was probably a month ago. 5 out of almost 9,000, 5 people give us a review. That's 5. And we've had probably 50 to 75 people give us 1-star reviews. So we started with a 5, and in 3 months, we're down to like a 2. Aggression and evil has dominated our world because there's too many of us that want to live in truth that are not standing up. So please, at a minimum, please, I don't understand why you won't do it.
Alex said it's her positive attitude that makes me want to hire her. So, number one, from an ethics perspective, as a counselor, you cannot be like pushing for reviews like this. That's like an ethical violation. I mean, people are welcome to review you.
I love that she blames Russia and evil for all of the negative reviews.
Because it obviously cannot be her, right? That's
Right.
classic narcissism. I'm just going to be honest. So, it is very normal for mental health clinics
Blame
to
isn't
get
helpful unless she's doing it.
right.
Yeah.
Blame's not helpful unless you're culpable and responsible. Then I'm going to let you know because that's truth.
Well, unless I'm doing the blame, it's not helpful for you.
Right. So, Julia says, so unethical to ask your clients for reviews, maybe anonymously, but also asking for 5-star reviews is also unethical. Yes.
Both.
In fact, so let me speak to this as my book just came out. I can ask for reviews for my book, but Amazon's going to get mad at me if I say, give me 5-star reviews. I have to say, give an honest review. And if you give me a 3, I want to hear, that. So you can. Now, as a counselor, let me finish, Mason. You're interrupting me more than I'm interrupting you today.
It's because you put me in another room. Apparently, I have my own space.
Yeah. Mason. All right. So
maybe I just have a lot to say today.
You do. You're getting fired up. It's like very sexy. That's why I named you. Did you notice I got on your computer and I named you Mason Sexy Man? I did that. I did that.
Yeah.
So no,
That's
as a counselor,
I did not put that on there for myself, y'all.
So as a counselor, I can ask for reviews, but I'm not supposed to like push for reviews or anything like that. So I had a client once that asked me, he's like, I would love to repay you. What's the best thing that I could do? And I was, because I'm not allowed to accept payment. And I said, if you would like to give me a review on Google, that would be great. Otherwise, if you want to hug me, I can give you a hug. Like it's not like that at all. And so but I can say, if you're happy with your services, feel free to give us a review on Google or whatever. I can say that, but I cannot pressure. I cannot beg. I'm definitely not going to be bringing it up over and over and over on TikTok. Like I'm not going to get on TikTok and say, hey, clients, give me a review. For one, when it comes to my counseling practice, I'm not even supposed to have my friends, like my clients are not supposed to be friends in my social media. Now, a couple of them have we've skirted around, and when I catch it, I'm like, oh shit. And I have to be like, hey client, I'm going to unfriend you because we're not supposed, it's in my release of information. We cannot be social media friends. Now, if clients are following me on my business profile and stuff, I'm not going to cut them off there, but it's ethical gray, and she's in the black area.
She's in the black. Yeah, there's no gray for what she's doing.
She's in the black for that, but she's shaming you. Also, 5 reviews being 5 stars and 50 to 75 being 1. That's actually, so when it comes to mental health reviews, it's pretty normal. Like go on any acute hospital, behavioral health acute hospital, and look at their reviews. If you've got a hospital with 2-star reviews, that actually makes some sense. What you're going to want to do is look at what is actually being said, because the stars, when you're working with mentally ill people, it's normal for a mental health clinic or a counselor to have some negative reviews, because that just goes with the territory of behavioral health. But you want to read what they're saying. That's where the value is in the written review. And if you've got somebody that's like, look, they're brainwashing, they're breaking up families, they're doing those types of things, and you're seeing that as a consistent pattern in the review, that's when you're like, you want to look for those patterns. If you've got some you know, they don't listen, or this is a horrible place, don't go there. Okay, you know, like,
Yeah.
I know one of my negative reviews, it's like talking to a tree. Oh,
Well, and if you get onto a business and you see 75 4 and 5 stars and 5 or 6 1 stars, you can probably consider that the 1 stars are a little bit of an aberrancy. Well, the same is true of the opposite. If you get on there and there's 5 stars and 75 1 stars, you better stay the hell away, because the aberrancy is not the 1 stars. The aberrancy is the 5 stars. The aberrancy, and watching from this video, those 5 stars are people in her business, or people who are friends, are saying, okay, I'll do this. Let me put this on here. Let me help her out. It doesn't have anything to do with actually what's going on. And the fact, and one of the things that I wanted, she said this, she said, we've made it, you know, get on, do your 5 stars. We've made it so easy for you to, no, she said, they're putting on these 1 stars and we've made it easy for them to do that because why? We've made it easy for you to put on your 5 stars. It's almost like she's saying, look, if
it's
I
your
didn't have
fault,
to,
I'm getting bad reviews.
No, well, yeah, maybe. That's not what I heard from it. What I heard from it was, if I didn't have to allow them to put these 1-star reviews on, I wouldn't. I've only set it out there so that you can give me the 5 stars, and I'm getting screwed here because all these people, because Russia has hacked her site. There's that, like, what the hell does Russia have to do with her 1-star reviews? The answer is 0, zilch, nothing.
There
what
might be
has
some
to do with the 1 stars? The fact that she is not being ethically or clinically effective.
Well, and I'm definitely seeing some narcissistic tendencies and some borderline tendencies here, in the sense of it's everybody else's fault.
Oh, yeah.
I have all the truth. You don't have
yeah.
any. And if things aren't going my way, that's because of you. So,
and lots of shaming.
sure.
Lots of why won't you? I just don't understand why you won't do it. What's going on here? Why won't you leave the reviews for me? Help me out.
Right. Because
I suck and I need your help.
Because the best way to get people to help you out is by treating them like shit and manipulating them into doing it the way that you want. Yeah,
my business is in trouble. My business is in trouble, but I'm a Mormon just like you. Can't you please just help me out and leave some dishonest reviews? Because that's what we do in the church.
One other thing that surprises me is, if she's got these kind of reviews, there has to be some feedback going back to these bishops that she's a bad counselor. Like, there's got to be. Why did they still use her?
Right. I would like to think so, but it doesn't seem to appear so. But then, as bishops, you know, you're trained not to think critically either. This is an LDS counselor.
Well, you're often desperate for, there's
sure. There's also that there's a mental health crisis, and if she's accepting people, then you might feel like that's all you have. So
all right, next video. Wow, that was awesome. That was a train wreck.
What you're telling me is that you have not gotten into the truth, or maybe you don't want to tell yourself the truth. Maybe you have told yourself the truth, but you really don't want to stay in the truth. Maybe you like being a victim. Maybe you like the attention you get from being a victim. I don't know what your particular case is. The question was, if I have PTSD and I keep getting triggered, is that a distorted fear? And the answer is yes. Because it's not the truth today. It's not the truth.
Oh God, help me. Okay, so trauma is where most of my specialty lies. That's what I've spent most of my time studying. So let's talk about a PTSD flashback. That is your amygdala in your brain firing faster than your frontal cortex can keep up. That is biology, has nothing to do with truth, has everything to do with biology. If you're having a flashback, it is not your fucking fault. Period. End of conversation. The end. Over.
No, if you would just accept the truth, you wouldn't have PTSD. This is a made-up thing. The VA made up for that. They made this up.
That
was sarcasm, by the way, just in case it wasn't clear.
And you haven't accepted the truth. So again, define what the fucking truth is. Can somebody please tell me what her truth is?
Well,
because
even whatever it is, like, what's the relevance here?
Right, she is blaming her patients for
Yeah.
having PTSD. That is
I could
bull
fix
fucking
you.
shit.
I could fix you if you would just do what I told you. Yep.
Yeah, no. That I'm pissed right now. Again, because trauma is where I've spent the majority of my clinical expertise time studying and whatnot. And wowza.
Yeah, that one hits hard for you.
Well, it does because I have complex PTSD, and
Yeah.
I'll just speak for people with PTSD. Well, and there's another thing in there that I've got it. She's talking about overreactions. So let me come back to overreactions or responding because I like it.
Right. I like being the victim.
A real flashback is awful. It feels like you are going to die. You can't sleep. You undereat, you overeat, you feel sick all the time. Like, it's not fun. There is no such thing as an overreaction emotionally thinking. And the whole idea of they're just doing that to get attention, that's bullshit too. What we see is that when somebody is responding as a bid for attention, there's something else going on under there that we've got to get curious about. And that the worst thing you can do is withhold attention. Like, by withholding attention, you inadvertently increase the intensity with which somebody is having a reaction. Now, there are people with certain disabilities where being the center of attention is part of that disability, or those extreme reactions are part of the disability. But again, there's disability. There's a misfiring going on in the brain. And as we get curious about it and we meet the underlying emotional need, it tends to just go away on its own.
Right. There's no, I mean, we know that people will use and abuse a diagnosis. They'll use and abuse a mental health or physical health, right? We know that will happen, but that's not the majority of what's going on. And you're blaming, 95% of the population for what 1 or 2% of the population might be doing. It's not helpful.
Right.
So that's one of those things where you need to meet with a client and decide after meeting with that client what's going on there, right? Munchausen kind of thing, right? It's just not helpful to blanketly describe every PTSD experience as being a victim or whatever.
Yeah. So just for those of you who are not used to watching me on film, giving my pen a haircut is how I am dealing with the antsiness in my hands right now, because I gave him a haircut. He needed a haircut. See? But yeah, no. As if, and I know a lot of people will hear this and be like, oh no, I knew this person, and they would respond or they would say things just to get attention. The goal is to get curious about what's going on for them that would make them react in a way that is socially unacceptable, or just outside of the norm. And almost always, once you get to the bottom of what's going on, the feeling of deficit, the behavior goes away.
Saying that they're only doing that for attention is to make me more comfortable.
Right. Absolutely.
Because
all right, Katie.
I don't want to give the time to understand. So if I can just write it off because, well, you're just behaving that way because you want attention, it makes me feel better without really getting to the root of what's going on. Yeah.
Hang on. Katie just sent me a text that says our kids are beating the shit out of each other. So I got to text them and then we'll move on to the next.
Do you need me to step out and call them?
Oh no, I've got it.
Okay.
I've got it right here. Thank you, babe, though, for that.
You could probably load the next video. Just
go ahead and load it.
Alex.
There we go.
Because I'm on the edge of my seat with. I can't understand why Julia thought that we would enjoy this, right?
Right.
Obviously, she just doesn't fit in what we're trying to do. Wow. Good job, Julia, because holy cow, this is exactly what we want to be doing.
All right. Catalyst for OC behavior. I'm going to say obsessive compulsive behavior, maybe not understanding your identity. All right, go ahead. And let's pause it as if little banners come up, let's pause it again so that way we can read those for the people who are watching.
Thousands of ways to act out obsessive compulsive behavior. And the catalyst of.
Go ahead.
No. Those are her captions.
And
So
here's the
Alex, let's
catalyst.
start this whole thing over because it looks like these
Catalysts.
are just the captions. So
Yes, you don't need to pause.
Thousands and thousands of ways to act out obsessive compulsive behavior. And the catalyst of what's driving it in every single person is the same. And here's the catalyst. The catalysts are, I don't understand who I am as a being. Like, I don't understand my identity as far as being a child of God, and the worth and the value and the importance and the love that God has for me. Like, I don't get that. And then secondly, I don't understand how to manage discomfort.
Okay. Bullshit.
Thousands and thousands of
I would like to know where the hell she went to school at this point.
Harvard, of course.
Harvard. And how the hell she passed her board exams. Okay. So
Well, I'm
obsessive.
certain she didn't learn this from there. She didn't learn this from her school. Unless she went to BYU, maybe.
Ooh, diss on BYU. Okay, so obsessive compulsive behaviors, obsessive compulsive disorders. It's very difficult to identify catalysts. But some of the things that we understand about obsessive compulsive disorder is that it is an extreme form of anxiety. The best treatment for obsessive compulsive disorder is SSRIs, so antidepressant medication that helps manage anxiety, and therapy, and that a great deal of those behaviors are self-soothing. It helps the individual feel like they are in control of a situation because their world feels very out of control. Now, that is how I understand obsessive compulsive disorder or obsessive compulsive behaviors. As far as it talking about your worth and not understanding that you're a child of God, ha 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 ha, no.
Well, it's interesting to me that one of the things that she said, not the first thing, but one of the things that she said was it's about managing discomfort. And with your explanation, that kind of fits, right? If you're struggling with anxiety, you said one of the big things is anxiety, which is oftentimes about what's making you uncomfortable. So it's not completely out there, but it is interesting that the first thing that she says is you're not recognizing who you are as a child of God. And once again, you're taking your religious beliefs and forcing them on a community of people as if that is the way to fix it. Listen up, y'all. I have the cure for OCD. You just need to understand that you're a child of God.
Right. Accept Mormonism and you'll be good. Your OCD will go away, despite the fact that individuals in high demand religions usually have an increase in obsessive compulsive behaviors.
Right. Well, and again, she uses black and white thing, right? The catalyst for all OCD is the same for everybody.
Well, didn't she say that the catalyst was like thousands of different things, and then she says it's just two?
No. Can you play the very beginning of that again, Alex? At least that's not what I remember hearing. So let's.
There's thousands and thousands of ways to act out obsessive compulsive behavior.
Oh, to act it out.
And the catalyst of what's driving it in every single person is the same.
Right.
Every single person is the same. And that, as soon as you say the catalyst in every single person is the same, it's total bullshit. Because it can be a trauma response. It can be something that you learned because it was modeled for you. It can be something that happens it just like genetics. No.
You said one of the treatments was SSRIs. Well, that lends itself to a serotonin imbalance, right? So it's just,
Well, and for some people, SSRIs don't help; they make it worse.
Right.
So
thousands of behaviors, but they all come from one thing.
Right.
Just step back from a comment like that and go, there's no way. There's no way that that's true. There's no way that thousands of behaviors from millions of people is all coming from the exact same thing. It's completely irrational. It's absurd. I'm going to use Bill Reel's word there. It's absurd. There's just no way that there is any truth to use her word, there's just no way that there's any truth to that kind of estimate.
Yep, none at all. All right, go ahead, Alex. Let's do the next one. That was, yeah, absurd.
You can't use my word.
A very common misconception that's unfortunately supported by much of the psychological community today is this idea that we truly are victims to things like addiction, to things like narcissism, or whatever the diagnosis label is. In other words, in our minds, it's all we believe that addiction is this lion that's lurking out there, and it finds a victim and it pounces on it, and now that's a victim of addiction. Or the same with narcissism or any of these labels. And the truth is that addictive behavior is a result of consistent choices that are not made in truth. And that individual can choose to stop making those choices. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. I look at you, Curtis, and I think, man, that was a lot of effort and work and stumbling and picking yourself back up and going and going and going. It was a ton of work, but you did it. You chose it. And I also had many addictions that I was choosing in my life that I needed. If I wanted recovery, I needed to stop choosing them. I was no victim to them. And so if you're in the other side of a relationship where you're saying my spouse is addicted to X or Y, and you are viewing that and saying that in the sense of my poor spouse, I want to support my spouse, you are enabling your spouse. Mm-hmm. You're pouring gasoline on a fire. And the best thing, the most honest thing and most loving thing you can do for your spouse is to reflect truth as to what they're really choosing.
Alex calls this gentleman Mr. Charisma. And yeah, Alex, I agree with you. Clearly, you see why they have so many followers. Like, I think people are following them to watch the train wreck happen. Wow. Good God Almighty. Okay, so addiction. Number one, he blamed the spouse for throwing fire for speaking facts that there's an addiction. I'd like to know what they're defining as addiction. And once again, I'd like to know what they're defining as the truth, because so far I haven't heard what the truth is.
Well, he said it there. He said that the truth is that addiction is related to consistent choices not made in truth.
That's clear as mud.
Well, I think that from their religious perspective, it is clear as mud, but let me clear it up. The idea is that if you're not adhering voraciously to the principles that the church teaches, you're susceptible to addiction, and it's going to be your fault because you're not being strictly obedient to what the church teaches.
See, and I'm going to say that I think you're making an assumption, because so far we haven't heard from them what they are saying the truth is.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, I don't know, but let's talk about addiction. Addiction is most addiction is because you're trying to is because you're trying to escape something that feels icky, because you're trying to feel something because you've been numb for so long, and usually has something to do with a break in attachments, in some sort of primary attachment. Like, you don't feel like you have a community that you belong in. Now, having said that, that is, again, most of the time, that's what we see. We see addiction coming because you have been victimized. You've had a horrific trauma in your life, or something very difficult in your life that you're trying to, again, escape or start feeling again. But I also see it a lot in people who have a chronic illness when they're trying to stop feeling pain in their body. Addiction is very complicated. It's very contextual. There's no one reason people struggle with it. And as you're able to say out loud, so like Mason, if I have an addiction, if you're able to say, hey, Sarah, I know you're struggling with this addiction, you're not throwing gasoline on a fire. You're seeing me. Now, how you go about saying that and how we go about talking about that is going to strongly influence how we interface with each other and how our relationship proceeds moving forward, because if you're shaming me with it, then we're going to see some more disconnect in our relationship. But where it's like, hey, I can see this as a challenge that you're having, but it's not who you are. It's just a challenge you're struggling with. Like Sarah is Sarah. Sarah is not the addict. Like the addiction is a behavior. It's Brene Brown's I did something bad versus I am bad. Right. So
Yeah.
I am not an addict, but I'm struggling with addiction. And as we talk about it from that factual and that how can we heal things, it gets better. Like there's too many things that I could say about addiction. I don't specialize in addiction. It's just not where I've spent my time. But what the research says is that there are, what the research says is that there's usually attachment issues, and that as we help somebody struggling with attachment, as we help them refine their community and connect with human beings, they do a lot better at overcoming that. What they're talking about is isolating the addict in the way that they respond to things. So I would say let's do at least one more video, and then let's come back for a second live video, maybe later.
How many videos are left? But I have one more thing to point out from that one. The one thing that really stuck out to me is, again, he tries to create a power differential there.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he does that is he says, I have many addictions that I'm struggling with. He's trying to make it sound like he's relating because he struggles with the same things.
Multiple different therapists.
But the reality is what he's doing is he's creating a power differential. He's saying, because of the experience that I have, you should listen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, we have 4 videos left. All right, let's hit these. Autism
in the family. Thank you in advance. So what I'm hearing her say is that from her perspective, and maybe he told her this, that he is high functioning autistic. I don't know what that means. I know the word, and I know many people who are autistic, and I don't know what high functioning autistic means. Does that mean he can hold a job? Does that mean he can live on his own? What does that mean? I do not know. And then she says he's bipolar on top of it. So a lot of people get diagnosed with quote unquote mental illness diagnoses. And the truth is that nobody knows what any of that means. All we know is this person behaves certain characteristics. And most people will then not subscribe any kind of responsibility to those people. The second they say, I have this, I'm reactive attachment, all of a sudden all responsibility goes out the window. Well, that is not what that means in truth. Any diagnosis that somebody has, they also are responsible for their perceptions, for their feelings, and for their behaviors. Now, I'm very aware that people get fiery mad when I say that. And those are the people that don't want to be responsible, quite frankly. And those are the people that typically either have been diagnosed and they want to just kind of hang back and kick back and just not have to do anything for themselves, because they can just say, well, I have this, I have depression, I have anxiety, I'm OCD, I am. And the reality is the only thing you am is a child of God. That's it. And if you have.
Okay. I was a little bit distracted. I was a little bit distracted answering our daughter again. Okay. Hang
Yes, Alex, these ladies are in jail currently.
Yeah, they're in jail right now. We don't know what mental illness is. Okay, so we don't necessarily. The behaviors that come with mental illness are that somebody is behaving outside of the norm of the other populations. Everybody has differing abilities. Yes. Individuals who have the cognitive ability to work through some of those, do they have a responsibility in working through their mental illness? Well, if they choose to, yes. I mean,
Can I make a statement here? I think
yeah.
I think what she's done is she's made it sound like getting a diagnosis is allowing you to not have responsibility. And by doing that, she's taken away the ability for a diagnosis to actually help somebody.
Right.
She's making the assumption that if you get a diagnosis, it allows you to not have responsibility for what choices you're making. And of course, she's using all-inclusive words again. Like she talked about what is a diagnosis. Well, nobody knows what that means. It's just
that's bullshit.
It's just ridiculous. And she's grouping everybody together. Well, everybody who's autistic wants to just not take responsibility for their things, or saying something like he's high functioning. And she says, I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what that means?
Yeah, it means they can function.
Right. You can say something like, I'm not sure what that means for him. I know that there's different levels of high functioning autism, but she makes it sound as if that's not a relevant diagnosis. Like you can't call someone high functioning autism because it's not appropriate. It's not in the DSM or, some silliness like that. She's invalidating the statement rather than looking for understanding of the statement. Oh, he's high functioning. Okay. What does that mean for him? Oh, you think he could hold a job. Okay. You don't think he could hold a job. Okay. There's no understanding there. And she is once again with these videos lumping everybody into the same category.
Right.
And it's not helpful and it's harmful.
Absolutely.
And
Mason, you need to take a look at your phone. Our good friends just sent us a picture. One of their kiddos just fell and they need to know if he needs stitches or not. So we are multitasking here. One of the things that from this video that really stands out is that the diagnostic labels are short speak for the professionals to be able to communicate quickly about what is going on. Also, a lot of people, when they have a name that describes the dysfunction, oftentimes it can help them heal, and it also helps inform us as to what treatments work the best. Like I know that somebody's been diagnosed with bipolar per se, then I know that, immediately I'm going to be, wanting to know about, okay, do we need to get medication on board? Who in this treatment team is going to be most effective? Do I want to do CBT or DBT? I'm going to need to work on things called emotional regulation. So the diagnosis is really for the professionals to be able to coordinate care and communicate with ease. And then for the client to be able to say, okay, I'm not alone. There's lots of other people like me. This helps me understand what's going on for me better. Do people utilize their diagnoses as a crutch or as an excuse to not heal? Yeah, some people do. And so we've got to be careful with how we are utilizing the diagnoses, but they do have a purpose, and that purpose is not evil. And that purpose does not stop people from recognizing that they have, however they identify in their religion. Like in this case, it apparently sounds like, quote unquote, the truth is I'm a child of God. Lots of people believe that and still struggle with mental illness.
Right. And it's not a cure-all.
Right. Well, and she's really labeling it as, because you're utilizing your diagnoses to inform others. And maybe, if I say, hey, I've got CPTSD, the reason that I'm going to talk about I have CPTSD is so that I can connect with other people and struggle. But what she's doing is basically saying, because you're doing that, you're below everybody else. Like it's your fault that you're struggling with this, and you're a shitty person because you're not utilizing your diagnosis in a way that I like.
Right. Well, we're getting little snippets here, but everything that we've seen to me demonstrates that it's essentially my way or the highway. I understand this and y'all need to accept it or you're just in the wrong. And I just don't see that ever being helpful. Like if somebody has a religious belief and you help to, because they want to be strengthened in that and what you do helps with that, okay, maybe fine. But you cannot say that the answer to this problem is for you to understand that you're a child of God.
Right.
It just isn't. That will work for some people, but it's not going to work for most people. And it's just, again, it's her saying my way is the way. And it's just,
Yeah. Right. Well, and a good counselor, you know, if we're going to talk about, you know, what good is, I really don't like the term good or bad. Like when she actually said that it's not about good or bad, I'm like, well, yeah, that piece is true. So it's not about good or bad, but an effective counselor is going to recognize that there are multiple ways. Like I talk about all the time in clinic that my job is different from like a medical doctor's job. A medical doctor is going to look in your ear and they're going to say you have an ear infection. And then they're going to go down their list of protocols, antibiotics. And if the antibiotic doesn't work, you know, if you're not allergic to anything, you know, here's my list. If you're allergic to something, here's my list. If we treat it and it doesn't get better, here's my list. You know, everything is protocol. Whereas in mental health counseling, it's a lot more like a buffet. It's like, hey, I got 100 different ways that we can approach this. Let's start trial and erroring and see which way works for you. And when we find something that clicks, well, then let's keep going down that path and whatnot. So therapy is more, we're going to trial and error and build on what works until you've met your goals and you feel better.
right.
So.
But what that doctor is not going to do with your ear is say, yeah, you have an ear infection. We have all these antibiotics we can give you. But what I really think you need to do is go home and pray that this is going to get better.
Yeah.
That's just not like he's not going to stay a doctor because it's not relevant information and it's going to hurt that child.
Right. That's like saying, hey, because that's like saying you have cancer and it's getting worse because you don't believe that you're a child of God.
Right.
And that, I mean, there's no evidence to back that. Like it's several times, every time she starts opening her mouth, I'm like, where's your data? Where's your data? Where's your data? So, all right, here we go.
She's
Next one.
speaking as if she's an expert and she's not giving expert data.
Yeah, there's definitely some narcissism going on. Either that or some delusional, like maybe some psychosis, like something. Well, this lady's got some mental health stuff going on herself.
She's popular, right? So that means that she's speaking the truth.
Well, Donald Trump is popular.
Will be the truth all through eternity. We live in a world where there's a lot of evil going on. And people are being very confused about the philosophies of men, the philosophies of us as people that we've created. And one of those philosophies is homosexuality, gender confusion, not understanding, am I in the right body? All of those things are made up ideologies of men. There's no truth in them. Gender is clear. You are born male or you're born female. And so this girl is out in the world trying to maneuver the world and assess the world and figure out who is she. And the mom's confused saying, you know, what do I do? How do I help her turn her back towards truth? Well, the first thing that needs to happen, Mom, is that you need to really hone in around her confusion around her identity. She doesn't understand that she's a daughter of God. She may tell you in her head that she is. And she may say, yes, I'm a girl, but she's saying, yeah, but I might be attracted. Well, attraction is a choice too. It is a choice.
Because we control our pheromones and our oxytocin dumps and our dopamine responses.
Well, and there
God,
again,
help me.
Well, and there again, it's a slippery slope, right? If she can establish that attraction is a choice, then it just slopes down to all these other things that, well, if attraction is a choice, then everything that you do is about your choice. And your actions, if I'm attracted to someone and so I then go and proposition them, well, that's a choice.
Right.
What I do with that attraction is certainly a choice, but stating that attraction is a choice, or that gender confusion is because you don't really understand that you're a daughter of God, isn't helpful.
No, well, and it's not accurate either. So let's talk about oh Julia says for sure Jodi is a narcissist. Yes, I'm definitely leaning that way. But I'm actually wondering if there's some delusional, like some
Right.
psychosis going on in there, because wowza. But I mean, so I was born biologically female. I have female anatomy. I am mostly attracted to men, but I remember being around 6th, 7th grade where there were a couple of girls where I was like, oh, they're really cute. And I felt the tingle of arousal and the areas that you get the tingle of arousal. And it freaked me the fuck out because, of course, I grew up in an environment where if you were lesbian, you were bad. And, you know, as I've grown into an adult, every now and then there will be a woman and I'll get the tingle of arousal. I wouldn't identify as bi, but there's definitely something there that has created that. And you know what that is, I haven't explored it because I'm in a happy marriage. Now, I have a bonus children who talk about being confused about how they feel in their bodies and whatnot. They're amazing human beings, very generous, very loving, very, you know, quote unquote Christ-like, if you want to utilize that term. And so Jodi is showing a gross lack of empathy here. She may have never experienced what it's like to have one gender, like sexual organs, and not feel like you connect with the social norms of that gender. And that's really when you know, my question is, what is male and what is female? You know, like, because it is our social norms that say girls are supposed to like pink and girls are supposed to like dolls and boys are supposed to like blue and boys are supposed to like shooting things. And so if a girl likes shooting things, what does that mean? Like, it's such an entangled mess. It's hard to really break it apart, and definitely not enough time to do that here. But there's a gross lack of empathy, another, you know, symptom for narcissistic personality disorder here, on the individuals who don't feel like they fit. I can't speak to that. I have not ever experienced that. I have felt female my entire life. But this is about believing the person. If I have a person sitting in front of me and they say, I have a female body, I have female anatomy, but I connect more to my masculine peers in these significant ways, and I prefer these things, I'm going to believe them. And the second question is, define evil. Like, how is somebody feeling like they don't fit into their body an evil thing?
Well,
It's not.
Well, and you know, we're not here to talk about the reality of the LGBTQ or what you're going to do with that. We're here to talk about how what she's doing is harmful. But what really strikes me is you talk about empathy, right? And she's not showing any. Well, what I find is that, and what the feeling I get from her and from lots of other people is, I don't have to be empathetic because I'm right. And I get that from my family members a lot too. I don't have to try and understand where you're at because I'm right. Like, I don't need to know if what you're feeling, or I don't need to know if being gay is a genetic thing, or I don't need to know that because I already know that being gay is wrong. And so there's no attempt to be understanding,
Right.
because you're coming from a platform of right. And the second piece of that I really find is that it feels to me very much like her therapy is a platform to share her own ideas. It's almost like she's a therapist so that she can be a missionary. And it's, you know, it's unethical and all this stuff, but I just kind of want to point out where I see, that's what I see, because they're in jail, right? Well, what led to that? And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that if you can't empathize because you think you're right, then you're going to lose the ability to see things from an ethical perspective. You're going to make choices that are unethical because you think you're right. And then you're going to end up in prison or in trouble or losing a license or whatever, in this case in prison, because you made choices based on the fact that you thought you were right. and you are completely unable to see someone else's perspective. And I think
Right.
that's the real danger here is there is no understanding. There is only, this is what you're struggling with. This is what I think you need to do.
Well, and I love, Mason, that you brought up that the thought stopping of, because my religion says this is wrong, because I believe it's evil, I'm not going to think about it outside of that context. It's a thought stopping technique. And you're right. Thought stopping leads to a lack of empathy because you lose curiosity and
Right.
you lose the ability to connect with somebody, because when you thought stop, you stop. I'm going to say when you thought stop, you brain stop.
Right.
Like if I am going to stop certain feelings, I stop all feelings. If I'm going to try and
Right.
stop certain thoughts, at least temporarily, I stop all thoughts. And if it's
Right.
uncomfortable for me to explore how this might be affecting somebody else, because then I'm afraid I'm going to be contaminated or whatever, it stops connection. So yeah, that's
Well,
really
and
shitty.
it doesn't have to be religious either. Like if you look at racism in general, like most people who are racist are not racist because they decided they wanted to be racist.
Mhm.
They're racist because of whatever message
Societal
they were taught
influences.
by parents or by friends or by society or whatever. They didn't really even make a choice. They were taught that this is what is right. They were
Mhm.
taught that, well, we as whites are superior to blacks, so this is the natural way that things go.
Right.
And if that's the message that you get taught and you're never invited to critically think about that message, you're going to end up in a situation that you didn't choose and maybe don't even want to be in.
Right.
So
She is
it's just,
right. She is approaching this from a place of moral superiority.
yes.
I am
Very
morally
much
higher
so.
than you, therefore my opinions are right, and you need to accept them
Right.
because look at how high I am up on this, and I have alphabet soup after my name, therefore
Right.
I understand human
Disgustingly so.
right. I understand human behavior better than you because I have alphabet soup after my name. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yes.
All right, next
Disgusting moral
video.
superiority. Yeah.
Oh, parenting. Ooh.
Can't be worse than what we've already heard, right?
I don't know. Let's see.
That's the awesome thing about choice. You can change. You can move from distortion into truth with a choice. And if you don't know how to do that, that's when you get some more help. There's tons of help here. We have all sorts of interventions, classes, podcasts, videos. We're here to help you see how to parent in truth rather than distortion. Because all these nice things that you're doing for your kids are actually high likelihood very controlling, and they're teaching your child how to not live as an adult in truth.
By being nice to them? Nice things I'm doing for my kids takes them away from truth?
Right. Well, and I it sounds like we're probably missing a little context there because, we don't have the question. But yeah, that's
Well,
again, it's a blanket statement.
Well, and she's blaming the parents for things of a child. I mean, there are definitely some things that parents influence. There are definitely things that parents will cause, but definitely not everything. Humans are humans. They have their own compasses. And obviously my kids, especially as they age and they start to think for themselves and express their independence and have their own life experiences and their own worldviews, and they shift away from me. That's natural and normal. I want my kids to develop their own life, their own belief system. I want them to be self-sufficient. I want them to be good humans. I want them, those types of things. But
Right.
It's almost like she's coming from a place of, if your kids aren't turning out the way that I am saying is the best way, well, it's your fault. And it's probably
Right.
because you did good things and ruined them. Or nice things and ruined
Right.
them.
She makes normal
I'm
statements
checking
too.
with friends again.
Like talking about how, most of what she said in there was fairly appropriate. But then you get to these statements, these blanket ideas that they're probably screwed up because you're doing so much nice stuff for them that you're not allowing them to grow up. And it's a vagary that is all inclusive and again, just not helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things, those ladies, they're in jail, but my understanding from what Julia told me is that they're in jail for the extremely abusive ways that they treated their children regarding things like masturbation, and pornography addiction, and that they destroyed marriages with bad advice and these types of things, and that they like moved in together. And so there's, you know, these are the like the little snippets that Julia gave me. So I think they're in jail because of their, you know, and I'm going to do some more research here, but my understanding is that they're in jail because of the child abuse charges. But based on this line of thinking that they keep talking about, this black or white thinking, and if you're in truth, you know, this thinking definitely leads to extremism in the way that you relate to your kiddos, and a high level of control. And so if you're not doing it the way I say, a narcissist is willing to do whatever it takes to get compliance. You know, so if you read my book, one of the things that you're going to see is that my dad went to overreaching extremes in order to control me implicitly. Like my mother had to follow me everywhere I went. I was on literal house arrest of my dad's own making. I think, Mason, my voice is coming in through your microphone, by the way. There's a little echo here going on. But anyway, my dad did that, and he told me the police did it. He blamed somebody else. And so yeah, as you're looking at these narcissistic things that she's saying, and this need for complete control over these humans, it makes sense how they went from these thought patterns to the behaviors of like duct taping their kids or making them sleep out on the porch in the winter in Utah because they were doing certain things that were apparently not in the truth that she still has not clearly defined. Like every time she talks about the truth, she just says the truth.
Right.
So,
Well, and I think that this comes back to something we've talked about both in connection with cults and outside of cults, but the idea that the ends justify the means.
yeah.
If truth is what you're fighting for, quote unquote, whatever your truth is, if truth is what you're fighting for, then you can do whatever you need to do to make sure that truth is what you get. For instance, if you think that masturbation is the devil, then that leaves you the ability to do whatever the heck you want to stop someone from masturbating. And it sounds like that's a little bit of what was involved here. The thing I found here is that as NBC News reported, officials announced that police found a malnourished minor with open wounds and duct tape on their extremities. So, you know, I don't know what the extent of that is. And of course, if she was just arrested, then of course it's time for, and Julia here says in jail for 6 accounts of child abuse. Julia, I don't know, is that for one child or for 6 different children? I don't know if you know that. But it's just recognizing that the ends justify the means, and it's a dangerous place to be, because if you've lost the ability to critically think about what you're doing, you'll drive yourself to hell.
Well,
doing whatever it is that you think is right.
Hang on, let me give this. Sorry. So some of our very good friends are on the way to the hospital to get their kids some stitches. So let me just tell her, yes, we are almost done, and we'll come get her. All right.
That's just
perfect.
That's just where my brain goes, is that if you get yourself into a situation where the ends justify the means, or that truth, your truth trumps everything else, you're gonna put yourself in a situation where bad things can happen, and oftentimes will, because you've lost the ability to see it from a different perspective.
Masturbation is an age appropriate and normal behavior. We've talked many times on our show before about the health of participating in it, both as an adult and as a child. But some of the similarities I'm seeing with my own story, because Julia told us there was, the masturbation piece, is my dad tied me up. Or I'm sorry, my mom tied me up because I was masturbating as a child. They tied me up to make me stop. And so I wiggled out, like I was a little kid, and they tied me up with one of my dad's neckties. So I just, slipped right out of it. But this is happening in lots of places, maybe not with duct tape, maybe, and starving your kiddos. Like malnourishment means that there was food being withheld. oh, and my computer is going into this extends better parallel by limiting. Oh, we need to go fast because my computer is going to die here soon. I don't have it plugged into anything. So
Well, plug it
anyway,
into something.
oh yeah,
Your charger's right there.
No, it won't reach. So anyway, we've got to get through this because we got to get to the hospital and pick up a kiddo now as well. So go ahead and give us this. Is this our last? Yes, this is our last video. So we'll burn through this one. But I'm just here to say that while this child abuse is very extreme, and we're all shocked, Mormon parents do this. Mine did it to try and stop me from committing evil of masturbation when I was very, very small. I would have been younger than 8 when I got tied up.
And this isn't necessarily about the specifics of abuse. All abuse is not okay. It's really the reason we're here is to talk about how we allow ourselves to get to this situation, or how people that we provide authority in our lives help us to get to this situation so that we can avoid it.
Right.
Whether masturbation is appropriate or not appropriate, you have to decide for yourself.
Right. But the way you respond to it.
Right. I guarantee that tying your child up
is not healthy.
Appropriate and not healthy. Yeah. So.
All right. Last video, and then we got to go to the ER.
To multiple different therapists. And what seems to happen is that it initially feels okay. But as I keep going, I just get worse and worse until things are so bad, I can't keep going. I've never gotten anything out of therapy that I couldn't get from just talking to people on the internet, which actually has been more productive for me.
Hopefully they're talking to people in truth.
Yeah.
So I hear that. And what I'm hearing is that this person is desiring to feel some foundation under their feet, like feel some stability under their feet. And they've gone to different therapists, and I don't know exactly what they're looking for. And they're walking away saying, I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Well, let me tell you, those of you who feel that way about life coaching, therapy, meditation groups, whatever modality you're going to, that you're not finding peace. If you are willing to come and learn about principles of truth and actually willing to humble and choose to be responsible and choose to be honest, you will find calmness. This sounds so, kind of like, hey, you do this and you'll have joy. And the truth is, if you actually do live principles of truth, you will have the fruit of joy.
Yes.
You will. So if you're trying to engage in distortion and still find joy, you will not be successful. It won't matter where you go. You must be willing to choose principles of truth, which is learning how to be honest, responsible, and humble. And there's many other principles, like be compassionate, know how to clean up your side of the street. Another word for that is repent. How to forgive, how to be long-suffering, how to be patient.
So Mormon, the truth is Mormonism.
And genuine and sincere. These are all principles of truth.
Yeah. Well, what comes to my mind is man is that he might have joy. Man is that he might live by principles of God. It's the same thing. Those principles of God bring joy.
Exactly.
Okay, they're Mormon for sure. At least we now know what the truth is, which is Mormon principles. What I can say about that is I lived Mormon principles to the point of burnout and ended up in a psychiatric unit for a true nervous breakdown. So the whole idea that you can live the principles of truth or the principles of whatever religion and that's going to protect you, or that's going to make sure that's going to ensure your joy, that's bullshit. It works for some, it doesn't work for everybody. Number 2, there are, and this is coming from a therapist. I am a licensed professional counselor. There are people who the modality of professional counseling, like sitting in a counseling room and talking about your problems, it just doesn't work. And that's okay. There are lots of different ways that you can get help. If you are finding, yes, the truth is her version of Mormonism. That's what Julia says. And Julia says 2 children were harmed. Each woman is charged with 6 counts of child abuse. So 6 felony charges each. So they obviously were not living the truth, whatever. Just not. Truth is her version of Mormonism for sure. So I'm here to say that there are people where regular traditional counseling does not work for them And that's okay. I'm also going to say, if you don't connect with a therapist, therapy's not going to work for you. So if you find a modality that works for you, where you feel heard and understood and validated, and somebody is challenging you to change in ways that feel safe and that feel productive, go with that. It's okay. Like, I've known some life coaches that are amazing professionals that help people achieve positive change in their lives. So if that modality works for you, great. I've worked in facilities where like my teenage boys, when I worked for foster kiddos, teenage boys in the foster system in San Antonio, we did therapy on the basketball court while shooting hoops. They had to move. I have a foosball table right here in my office. I've had kiddos, if we're sitting on the couch doing talk therapy, it doesn't work. That's okay. The challenge is finding something for you that works. It's not about these truth, religious principles and prescribed things that you have to do to be happy. It's about finding a way to connect with humans that encourage you to be your best self. And what your best self is personal to you. A good therapist, a good mentor is going to help you achieve the goals that meet what you want in life the best, without causing harm to others. As soon as you start causing harm to others on purpose, because sometimes in marriage therapy, the process that can get rough sometimes, but if you are working in a way that you are never intentionally causing harm to another human, and you are improving and reaching the goals that you have set for yourself, and you find somebody to mentor or encourage or be your accountability partner, whether that be in traditional therapy, non-traditional therapy, life coaching, or just a really good friend, or if it's in a religious community, great. Hang on to it until it stops working for you. And when it stops working for you, give yourself permission to find new ways. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. You know what really irritates me about this video is that she gets this statement from somebody that says, I've gone to therapists, I've never found anything that works for me, but I do just talk to people on the internet and that's helpful. Somehow from that statement, Jodi knows exactly what's wrong.
Right.
And that is what is so dangerous. Because if you fall into believing that, well, Jodi knows, then you're going to get advice that could, you're going to get advice that maybe isn't helpful. You're going to get advice that is helpful, or you could get advice that is incredibly harmful. She says, so now she knows exactly what it is, and she states what it is. What this person's looking for is stability in their life.
Right.
How do you know that?
Well,
how do you know that they are unstable?
I'm going to say this. My assumption about that person is that they feel, assumption, please note, assumption. Right. I'm saying assumption. My assumption is that they feel safer in a forum where they maintain a certain level of anonymity. That it's easier for them to open up and hear advice when there's that internet, there's a screen that protects them. And if that's what works for them, great. I hope that individual is taking what works and resonates for them and recognizing that there's a lot of shit on the internet too, and leaving what doesn't. But there's nothing wrong with that.
But if you were their therapist, if you were sitting in Jodi's place, you wouldn't be offering that kind of advice when you don't know. You could say, it sounds like this is like what you just said. Well, it sounds like what's going on is this. I hope they find something that's helpful for them. That's not harmful information. It might not be very helpful, but it's not harmful. But if you make the assumption that you know what's wrong and that it's stability and that the way to stability is to repent and live the principles of truth, you've taken them down a slippery slope that is not helpful and is very harmful because it's not your place.
What she's just done is she's taken something that works for this person and contaminated it.
Yeah.
Like if I had a client sitting in front of me and they were like, hey, I'm getting this awesome insight in these group forums on the internet, and I feel like that's helping me better than counseling. I would be like, hey, that's awesome. What are some of the things that you're learning? And I would hear what they had to say. And then I would say, do you feel like you want to grow some of these things in therapy, or do you feel like you want to go on maybe an as needed basis in our sessions because that's working better for you than what I'm doing? And it would be this place of, let's get curious. Let's, I want you to be honest with me, and I want you to be able to say, hey, Sarah, I don't feel like I need you anymore because this is working better. But I'm going to check in and be like, hey, do you want to take some of this and let's bounce it back and forth and explore it and figure out what is it about this that's working for you and whatnot. I'm not going to replace something that somebody tells me is working and say, oh, well, that's not good because it's not the way I want you to do it. And because if you keep going on the internet, I'm not going to make money. Like, that's a problem.
I've got to get my 5-star reviews. I've got to get them somehow.
Right? No joke. So yeah. So basically what I'm going to say on this, we didn't cover any of the child abuse charges, but what I am going to say is that there's a ton of red flags here. I really hope that the licensing board of her state was paying attention to that, because if these things had been brought to my awareness prior to the case, these are some things that I would be like emailing some links of this stuff to her licensing board, because if she is speaking as a counselor and giving this type of advice, it's very concerning to me, because it's very biased, it's very unethical, and I would be interested, like, one of the things I want to, like, did she have complaints against her license before this event? And I think that Julia had said that she had one, but she had taken the continued education to get that marked off. I mean, that's just really, it's really concerning, and it definitely makes sense to me. Like, if these are the things that they're saying, it is not shocking at all to me that there are victims in their wake. It makes me wonder, how many families did they break up with these all or nothing ideals? How many children did they harm? We've got 6 counts, I think is what Julia said. How many other victims are out there that we're not seeing because of the advice that they are getting? And so
the ones that she didn't specifically abuse, like, can you imagine the advice that parents got because their 13-year-old came out as LGBTQ, right? Or can you imagine the advice that a couple got because one person lost their faith in their church? Can you imagine the way that she advised people in the situations that didn't go in line with their quote unquote truth? Like, if that's where you're coming from, you cannot give the advice that the person needs. You can only give the advice that you think that they need, and you're usually going to be wrong. Well,
yeah, I mean, when I do therapy, I do most of my insights through questions, not through statements. And I reserve my statements until I have a good understanding of the client. And then when I make a statement, I always check in with the client. Does that feel accurate, or do you feel like I'm off? And hopefully my clients are like, no, Sarah, that's off. Like, sometimes they're like, man, you nailed it. But oftentimes they're like, yes and no, and this is where you're right and this is where you're wrong, and we get to do that. But I would say we need to close up, Mace, because we're needed in the emergency room here to go pick up my grandbaby. I'm adopting that baby. She's my little grandbaby. So I gotta go pick her up. But I would like to close with, there is no way for us to track the victims. All of the victims that this woman has impacted. And so reach out and speak out, because as we talk about things that are healthier, we normalize it. People are normally pretty good at recognizing good from bad, not always, which is what makes some of this stuff so dangerous. But if something feels uncomfortable, get curious and question why. Trust those instincts that you have. And when you see stuff like this, speak out against it. I am really proud of those 50 to 75 1-star reviews, because those 50 to 75 1-star reviews on this lady's business probably saved some people. So thank you. Thank you for giving an honest review there. So as we say that, thanks so much for watching today. Mason, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we hang up and whatnot, or are we good?
I don't think so.
All righty. So thanks for joining us today. Let us know what you think. And maybe we will speak to some of the child abuse things. I know that over at Mormon Stories, they did something with this. I haven't seen that because, again, I wanted to be able to be raw and looking at it for the first time. So I'm going to hop on over to Mormon Stories and see what John DeLynn and Natasha Helfer Parker had to say. And we will follow up on this at a future event. So
yeah, thanks for being here, Julia. Love the comments and, of course, all the content that you gave us.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So thank you, listeners. We love you, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Deuces.